High up in the Andes Mountains, almost 4,000 meters above sea level, lies a lake older than memory. And on its surface is something nobody would ever expect. Villages? What's up everyone? My name's Charlie and I'm Caesar, and I've been pondering. After my last video on cargo cults, I've been having a look at other niche groups of people, and today I have found an indigenous group that is bloody awesome, that being the Uru people. And you might be wondering what's so special about these guys. Well, the Uru, also known as the Uros people of Lake Titicaca in South America, live entirely on man-made floating settlements on water. So step back, relax, and allow me to delve into the history and background of this fascinating culture. Alrighty, first I should explain how people reached this region in the first place. As the Pleistocene epoch ended, so too did the last ice age. During this transition period between the Pleistocene and the Holocene epoch, Paleo-Indians, originating in Siberia, would make the journey across the Bering Land Bridge. This was a mass of ice that connected Siberia and Alaska together at the time. Of course, wherever there is food and land, humans will eventually get there, and these guys, likely following migrating animals, ended up in the Americas. Good timing and all, cause the land bridge would soon disappear. These Paleo-Indians and their descendants would start to spread throughout North and South America, bringing unique dogs and customs with them, and would diversify among the two continents. All indigenous groups in the Americas can be linked back to these original people who crossed the Bering Land Bridge. After a few thousand years of settling down, distinct ethnic and sub-ethnic groups would begin to emerge. This is where our favourite water-walking pals come into the picture. It is believed the Uru were some of the first to inhabit the Andes, as archaeological layers show the region in and surrounding the lake Titicaca has been inhabited since at least 3700 BCE. This makes them older than the Inca and other groups in the region. Much more time would pass and the Uru would become established as the people of this lake. Over time, groups like the Aymaras and Inca would rise to prominence, and to avoid conflict, as well as keep their communities safe, they made the move to the surface of the lake. So let's talk about the plant that makes all this possible, the Totara reed. The Totara reed, sciencey name being the Scoia'mplectus californicus, is a subspecies of the giant bulrus sedge, and is known to form a dense layer of roots called the chili that become a buoyant structure when cultivated. These reeds are abundant all across Lake Titicaca, and the Uru people for generations have honed their skills in not only creating all sorts of boats, etc. out of this plant, but also in maintaining the community's giant raft, as do not forget is a living creature. The reeds are placed and layered in a crisscross pattern to strengthen the overall structure further. When the Uru want to remain settled in one spot, the structure is anchored by poles into the surface of the lake so it remains in place. Things like storms, heavy rain, and more housing on these large plant rafts cause strain on the overall structure, so these communities diligently add it with new fresh reeds so that it stays healthy and strong. Since they have done this for so long, this maintenance and cultivation of the reeds is a piece of piss. Sometimes the Uru keep the island connected to the land, but most of the time it is kept in a state which is best for the community. However, hundreds of years ago, keeping the island deep within the lake provided salvation from subjugation and harm by outside powers. One of the only things out of their control they had to worry about was weather and harsh storms, floods, droughts, and sharp temperature changes, as it can get very cold during the night so high up. That being said, let's talk some more about the Uru themselves. Due to the way of life the Uru lived, this left them relatively far away and hard to reach, so they were left relatively alone by the expansion of empires that came and went. The first group to antagonise them and the catalyst for their way of life were the Aymara, followed by the Inca during the 15th and 16th century. The Uru avoided taxation by the Inca for as long as possible, but eventually, as the Inca had a stronger grip over the region, the Uru chose to accommodate them and began paying taxes. However, the Inca would take slaves from time to time and would end up having to be landless workers for the Aymaras, who were absorbed by the Incas as well. Eventually, the Inca would fall from grace and the Spanish would soon follow, but due to the location of the Uru, they would be left alone by the Spaniards. Over time, the language of the Uru would become forgotten and an extinct language, as increased trade with the Aymaras and Spanish missionaries would lead to the Uru learning both languages of the Spanish and Aymar Aru. Time would pass once again, and in the 18th century, explorers would bring back sketches of these floating communities, capturing the fascination of people back home. This leads to the next part of our video: tourism and climate change. As the world would come to find out about the Uru people, tourists would slowly make their way to the region, not only to see the lake but to observe and speak to the mysterious people that lived on the water. Storms and extreme weather over the decades would destroy some reed rafts and would result in some of the Uru building their settlements close to the city of Puno in Peru, so they could acquire goods if needed. By the way, I've forgotten to mention this, Lake Titicaca is huge! It is around 8,372 square kilometers wide and stretches over multiple countries. This gives the Uru much space to move around, and they travel from all over it during different times of the year. As the 20th century began, even more people would come to Lake Titicaca as tourists and the Uru's people's isolationist way of life would draw to a close. Invasive fish like rainbow trout would be introduced in the 1930s, as well as Argentinian silverside in the 50s. The Uru would get their hands on things like motorboats thanks to their growing adaptation to accommodating tourists, with trinkets, lodging, etc. This is when the Uru way of life really made the change from a subsistence way of life to a tourist-run economy. However, the fundamental way of life for the Urus did not really change. The islands remained and were cultivated, and even now had new tools to help with maintenance of their reed villages. At the end of the century, permanent settlements like Uros Cantati and Uros Tatino would be transformed for tourists' use, and even today you can book a stay at one of these floating islands. Can't really say it's for me because it does seem like it's glorifying their culture a little bit, but this would do numbers with those shitty Instagram travel influencers. Let's talk about some negatives. You hear all about it and it creeps into everything eventually, but pollution would eventually start to affect Lake Titicaca, and this would have a rebound on the Uros. Portions of the reeds growing on the sides of the lake's health would decline. This is a big issue, as without the Tatora, there are no Uros. They are that intertwined. Water levels would recede due to the drought, and harmful pollutants would seep into the lake from local mines, which would affect the creatures in the lake. Some Uros would lament on the fact that due to their dependency on tourism, that their privacy had been lost to them, which was a core part of the old ways. Reflection. Some may see the Uros and think they are traditional people stuck in the past, but if you pay attention, you will see that they have adapted to the current world. Solar panels lay on the islands to power things like TVs, charge phones, and power light bulbs in their homes. Children even go to schools that exist on floating islands where they learn Spanish and Aymara. These people have an extremely resilient way of life and a fascinating culture, and since they have adapted so well to the times, I personally believe they will adapt to the future in kind. Hello! This is the end of the video, so if you've enjoyed, please do subscribe and like the video. I would be overjoyed. However, I think there is an elephant needed to be addressed. It's been nearly 3 months since my last post, and yeah, I have no words to be honest, and I should just show how sorry I truly am by uploading the next one in a timely manner. I hope you all keep your eyes peeled for it. Peace.
I solemnly swear, from this moment forward, that I will never
fail to upload
again.